A common I think a common perception is that photovoltaic systems, because it's electricity involved, they're more complicated. It turns out, in my experience, that photovoltaic systems, as Catherine said, are fairly simple technology. In order to install a photovoltaic system properly, you definitely have to know a lot of information and know what you're doing. But it's much easier to install a photovoltaic system properly than a solar hot water heating system. Solar hot water heating systems are a more complex system. I really consider them analogous to standalone photovoltaic systems, where they have to be designed in proportion to a load. Some of the design considerations that we face, and that as consumers it's important for you to understand. A lot of you may be familiar with or have an impression of the solar industry from the experience in the 1970s and 1980s, where there were a lot of tax credits, as there are today, and a lot of systems went in, not all of which were of a high level of quality. And what was going on is that people weren't paying attention to some of the basic design considerations that are required, and they were installing systems that froze or had mechanical parts that stopped working, or that needed maintenance that didn't get followed up on. So some of the major design issues are solar hot water systems are subject to freezing. It doesn't freeze often in Tucson, but it freezes enough that that most systems that all systems need adequate freeze protection. The things that I consider to be adequate freeze protection are either using glycol, a food-grade glycol, which is basically an antifreeze, a drain-back system where you don't have any fluid in your collector when the pump is a system, which is where you've got a batch water heater with 40 gallons of water or 30 or 60 up on your roof. Other systems, often called open-loop systems, where they're pumping domestic water directly through your collector. I've seen a lot of those up on roofs that are not functioning. Actually, one of the a colleague of Bruce's had what I don't know the whole city of Tucson, but I like to say that he had the last operational open-loop system in Tucson. Because of his good karma, it recently froze, and now he's getting a closed-loop system. So they have little protections that people can put in, but they fail in our water conditions. So subject to freezing, make sure whoever you deal with has a system that's going to address the freezing constraints. And fortunately, at this point, the requirements that TEP has in order to get a rebate help steer you in the right direction. They're subject to overheating in summer. We have an issue in Tucson that when you design a system to produce enough hot water for your winter use, in the summer when you're not using that much hot water, these systems will significantly overheat, and that has to be addressed. The ways to address that: you can tilt your collector up to a really high angle. So, a lot of times people want to mount them flush to their roof. Most pitched roofs in Tucson are either 14 or 18 degrees. To qualify for TEP's program, you have to be up at least 20 degrees. And really, to get optimal solar gain when you're trying to heat for the winter, you want to be up above, I like to be up above 45 degrees. And to deal with summer overheating on some of these systems, it's good to be up above 60 or up at 60 degrees. We can't go above 60 degrees. So high collector angle. You can use a batch water heater. Batch water heaters are less efficient, and so you just can't get the water to overheat. So that's not an issue. Or a drain back system where once it reaches the high temperature limit, it just shuts off, and there's no fluid in the collector anymore. Most systems are backed up by an electric tank. If you have a single tank system, that's the main reason for that. Is an electric tank is easy to insulate and keep the water hot in your tank. If you have a gas tank, it's got a flue in the middle, and you're going to lose heat out that flue, and it's harder to keep that temperature warm for hot water use in the morning. So that was the next point. You need to supply more storage in order to have hot water in the morning. Your conventional 40-gallon tank in your house only has 40 gallons because it can reheat itself as you use the water. A solar hot water heating system, depending on the number of people in the house, will often have a larger tank. Common is 80 gallons of storage that allows you to heat that up to 140 degrees or some range during the day, and then you can use that water at night and still have 120 degree water in the morning. And in southern Arizona, you can heat, depending on the technology you use, you can heat 50 to 90% of your hot water can come from a solar hot water heating system easily. So this is just a basic description of different types of systems. I would encourage you to go to some of the different solar installers' booths and talk to them about different types of systems. I am at this point preferential to the active systems on this side. There's a glycol-based system. The advantages are it's a universal installation. You can install it. You can install the collector just about anywhere. You can run the piping to your storage tank. It's a fairly simple system. Limitation is it does require maintenance every 5 years, and you have to make sure that you don't oversize it or that you deal with the constraints for overheating, or your glycol will break down unreasonably quickly. Drain-back systems are another active system. They have less maintenance needs. They are a little more technical to install properly and make sure that you avoid freezing. The pipes all have to slope downhill, so you can't install it on a roof and run the pipes over the roof and then back down to a water heater. It's all the pipes have to slope down. The batch water heating systems, there's a thermosiphon system or what's called an ICS, Integral Collector and Storage System. Those systems, for me, I used to install them when these copper hearts were half the cost of the active systems. They have no pumps. They're a very simple system, and they appeal to me for that reason. But when copper prices jumped up 3 or 4 years ago now, those systems became just as expensive as the active systems, and they don't produce nearly as much hot water, and they tend to lose their hot water overnight. So in the morning, in the wintertime, you typically will have to use backup. This is just a description. So on your roof, you've got a collector. This is for a drain-back system. You've got a collector on your roof. The pipes, as I said, all have to slope downhill. This drain-back tank holds the fluid that gets pumped through the collector, and there's a heat exchanger inside there, and you pump your water from your main storage tank through that heat exchanger. Here's a glycol system. These two are very similar systems. They're both called closed-loop active systems. This system is just going to have a single loop with a heat exchanger inside the tank, typically. And so again, you've got your collector on the roof and a pump. And basically what's happening is there's a controller that's looking at the temperature of the collector and the temperature at the bottom of the tank. And anytime the collector temperature is hotter than the temperature at the bottom of the tank, it'll turn the pump on and pump fluid through the system and heat it up.